What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for watching the show. Wanted to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. This app is really easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your cash on a single lineup. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use the promo code PFF and download the app now. Smaller class here for the Los Angeles Rams. They traded back out of the first round and into the beginning part of the second round. They traded with the Atlanta Falcons, got an extra first-round pick next year to do so. So this is a team with multiple first-round picks now. Terrence Ferguson was their first selection that they made there in the second round. A lot sooner than I thought Terrence Ferguson would go, but I do think he's a good football player. Josiah Stewart, the edge rusher from Michigan, in the third. Jarquez Hunter, the running back from Auburn, in the fourth. Ty Hamilton from Ohio State, the defensive tackle there, in the fifth, as well as Chris Paul Jr., the Ole Miss linebacker, in the fifth too. And then in the seventh round, Pittsburgh wide receiver Kanata Mumpfield here. So not a ton of picks, 6 selections total here for the Los Angeles Rams. Our staff gave them a B+, I think, taking into account the players that they drafted, and then as well as getting a first-round pick next year. What do you think of the Rams haul and how they navigated the draft?
I think it was fantastic. I think you have a team that didn't have a whole lot of picks, that was one of the more prime trade-down candidates in the first round, and for them to get a first-round pick next year out of that trade when the Falcons wanted James Pierce Jr., I think you could argue this up even to something like an A-, because now you have 2 first-rounders next year. You're going to get another offseason of questions around Matthew Stafford and who their quarterback's going to be, but in a quarterback class next year with a lot of names, and it's very wait and see to see who's going to be the first round guys, to have 2 first round picks, especially one from a team that, look, Atlanta, what would you put them, 50-50 to make the playoffs? So is that a fair assessment in that division with the Bucs still there, and then
Sure.
the NFC 50-50 that could still be a top 20 pick, right, pretty easily. So I think in the context of getting an extra first-round pick, it's fantastic. We've known for 2 years that Sean McVay's wanted another tight end. They got Terrence Ferguson at 46. You mentioned it, maybe a little early, but I think after the Senior Bowl, I moved him up to, I think he was the 4th best tight end in the class for me. So I don't have a big issue with it, and he's still a complimentary piece. They're going to know how to use him in that offense. I love the Josiah Stewart pick. I think edge depth was an underrated need, and you talk about 25 to maybe even 30 pass rush snaps a game. I think that's perfect for Josiah Stewart. Jarquez Hunter, I'm a big fan of. I know they already have Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, but he gives you an element of speed, and I think to be in that third back kind of role and get some development to his footwork and his vision, I think Hunter could pay off in the long term. Hamilton's a solid run stopper. Chris Paul, that's an absolute steal in the 5th round. Again, 4th best linebacker in the draft for me. I think one of the 4 guys I saw as a potential starter. I would not be shocked as a 5th round pick if Chris Paul won a starting linebacker job on this team. And then Mumpfield, you've identified as a guy that McVay would probably like in his offense, right? He's a physical player, sometimes a good route runner, a little bit inconsistent. But I think for the picks that they made, getting an extra first next year, trading back and still getting these players, this is an excellent draft. You could argue it up to an A- for me.
Yeah, with this draft, I gave it a B+, including them trading and getting the first-round pick, because I like Terrence Ferguson, but I do think that he was overdrafted quite a bit from where I had him on my big board. They probably could have, I see Walt in the chat saying this, like they probably could have traded down again and gotten Terrence Ferguson, but they probably just didn't want to mess with it. Very clearly they wanted a tight end, and I believe Mason Taylor had already gone off the board.
Yep.
Had Elijah Arroyo been off the board at that point?
No, he went, I think it was 50 right after this to Seattle, and then you have to remember too, the tight end market was hot because even Harold Fannin went 67.
Yeah.
So if they had traded down
67.
another 20 spots, they may not have gotten Ferguson.
No, I guess that is true too. Yeah, Mason Taylor goes off the board at 42, so they probably believed we got to go get our guy, because that would have been 3 tight ends off the board there. So you're right, the market was heating up and getting pretty hot. So I don't hate it. I guess that's fine. And again, I like Ferguson as a player. He was drafted a little bit early, but you're right. It did seem like that was sort of how things were going. I love Chris Paul Jr. and Kanata Mumpfield. I think those are 2 day 3 studs, potential steals that they get there. Jarquez Hunter, again, good football player. Kind of redundant for who they have right now, right? Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, Cody Schrader, and now Jarquez Hunter. And it's like, those are all for the same player, which is fine that you have the identity that you like. And maybe Jarquez Hunter ends up beating out Blake Corum. It sort of depends on what they think of Blake Corum when he was coming back and what he felt like last year. But to me, I just don't think you needed to draft that player with a fourth-round pick. Perhaps there's some different thoughts in the building about wanting to get somebody in there. Maybe Jarquez Hunter ends up being their RB2. And if he does, then obviously it's a good selection for them there in the fourth round. But I, right now, still have faith in Blake Corum to be that guy. So I feel like it's a little bit redundant with the skill set and the type of running back that he was. So I gave them a B+, including the trade down and the value that they got for that. But overall, solid. I actually really like their day 3 stuff. And day 1 and day 2, I think they just got some good role players for them as they're building out the rest of that roster.
I think what it is, I think really Les Snead and Sean McVay with running backs, I think they kind of treat those guys like baseball GMs treat pitchers, and they just go, look, somebody's going to get hurt. You can never have enough of them, and we've seen the Rams.
That's fair. That's fair.
We've seen the Rams in the past have success with guys like Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson and all the other names that it seems like come out of nowhere to at least be somewhat productive for this team. I really think that's how they treat the position. Now, we assume going into the year that Kyren Williams is going to be the feature guy, and he should be, right? He's the best back on the team right now, but I think that's how they treat it, is just go, you can never have too many of these guys. They're always getting hurt. They're always tweaking an ankle. They're always taking big hits, and I know as physical as Kyren Williams is, even he can get banged up sometimes. So I think just to have another guy in the building, I don't know if they draft a running back every year, or they just find one sometimes as a UDFA, but they just always have another one down the pipeline that just go, hey, get us our 4 or 5 yards, run the system the way we need you to, keep things moving on offense. I think Hunter's another guy that can do that for him. So I really don't mind it at all.
Let's see. The last draft where they did not draft a running back at all was 2017.
Boom. There it is right there.
Which technically they drafted a fullback that year. Well, so if you really want to go to no backfield players at all, you got to go to 2016.
And that was, McVay wasn't there yet. So that means they've taken a backfield player every single year that Sean McVay's been there.
Yeah, when did McVay get there?
17.
He did get there in 17?
Yeah, because Goff was drafted in 16. He wasn't there for that.
That's true.
17.
Yep. So basically, yeah, every single year they have drafted a backfield player. Wow. Good call. Good poll, Dalton. That's why you're on the show. That's why we're keeping you around.
There we go.